Welcome to On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Whether you've been using it as a means of garbage disposal, a shower cap, or the secret recipe to getting your rice soft, you're going to have to find an alternative. As of January 1st, the government began enforcing a ban on single-use plastics, such as plastic bags. It also allows and includes straws, food utensils, and styrofoam containers to be banned. Needless to say, that didn't come without resistance, with plastic bags now being sold by businesses from anywhere from 25 cents to $1. It's pretty clear the new Environmental Protection Act is still not clear to all of us. So tonight we bring in the professionals to help us understand a bit better what this new act is all about and what it means for us. When we come back, officials from the Ministry of Environment and Housing. It's all on the record. The discussion begins on the other side of this break. Hello and welcome to On the Record, and a balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for. And welcome back to On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Thanks, as always, for watching. It's been 30 days, thereabouts, since the introduction of the Environmental Protection Act and the plastic ban that has taken effect. Truth is, still many of us don't understand its implications, with plastic bags becoming almost an essential part of every Bahamian household. It has left some bemoaning its removal. With me tonight, Dr. Rhianna Neely-Murphy, Senior Environmental Officer, and Lyndee, Bowe, Environmental Officer with the Ministry of Environment and Housing. Ladies, welcome to On the Record.
Thank you very much.
We thought to do this show, and I have to be honest with you, I toyed with this for a while. I was conflicted about whether we should do the show because, in my opinion, the ban's in effect. Let's get over it and move on. But like anything else on this show, we think we have a sworn duty sometimes to explain to Bahamians what's going on, because there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of anxiety, it seems, over this. But let's talk first about how did we get to this point of banning plastics? What events led up to it? Why is it necessary?
Okay, so the impetus for the plastic ban are twofold. So it is a response to our environmental situation. Plastic products, they line our beaches, they line our streets, they make their way into the landfills, they make their way into the oceans, and in many instances, we end up consuming these plastics through the foods that we eat. They fly all around the place. So that is the first reason for the plastic ban. The plastics that we're banning are also made from fossil fuels. So the second reason why we're banning these items is in response to our climate change policies in the Bahamas. Fossil fuels, the burning of fossil fuels lead to climate change, and some of the weather, the weather changes that we're experiencing. We see right now, Australia is on fire. Brazil is flooded. We had Hurricane Dorian last year. All of these are as a result of the changes in our weather system and our planet that we're seeing as a result of the burning of fossil fuel. And plastic products are a byproduct of the fossil fuel industry. So where the Bahamas is saying, one, because it's an environmental nuisance, and because it's a part of what causes and what leads to climate change, we're banning these items. And these are small steps, but we have to start somewhere.
And when you say small steps, some people may say, well, you know, does it really matter, a country of our size, population, does it really matter? Are we going to make that much of an impact? Do we have that much of a footprint?
I would say yes. Any action that any one person can take will have an impact. So you can imagine there's almost 400,000 Bahamians. That will be a pretty significant impact in the reduction of plastics that make it into the ocean, as well as a reduction in the amount of the fossil fuel that is burned and the byproducts that are used to make these products. So
understanding that our environment is changing, and I think any Bahamian sort of who has any right-thinking Bahamian will recognize that we are facing some serious issues with climate change. I mean, unless you have been under a rock in a deep cave, you would know what Dorian has done and has left us with. Why is it that we still have not embraced this notion, it seems, as a people?
The notion of banning the plastic?
That something needs to be done, yeah, banning the plastic, but also understanding the effects of climate change.
Well, I think that change is hard. Change is difficult for anybody to grasp. You mentioned that plastics have become almost an essential part of our lifestyle. So taking that away is not going to be easy for the average Bahamian, even with the understanding of climate change. Because I have a few well-educated friends that are questioning the reasoning behind the plastic ban. What y'all doing over there? And these people have went to school and they understand climate change and they understand environmental conservation. But you're now touching something that is personal to a lot of people. These plastic bags and these plastic products, that's my plastic. That's my fork and that's my bag and I want that. So the change is always difficult. The second thing is that climate change has always been spoken about in 50 years or 100 years. And so now we're actually experiencing some of the impacts of climate change today. So climate change and the changes that have come from them they're real for us right now. We have experienced sea level rise. We have experienced temperature increases. We are experiencing increases in vector-borne diseases right now. So it's no longer 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road. And so that you need some time to also reckon with that because the change in that messaging was from 50 years to now this is our reality. So that's also difficult to handle.
I think too, a part of it is we don't always make the connection between how our actions actually affect the actual climate. Most Bahamians would not have a discussion generally about climate change.
It's my plastic bag.
Yeah,
I only want to carry my grocery in this bag. Like, why is that my responsibility?
We don't really make the connection between just something as simple as using a more environmentally friendly product and how we use that to protect the environment. So I think this plastic ban too was a way to start the discussion so a lot of Bahamians could understand the way that each individual action has an impact on the environment.
If I can steal a phrase from a former colleague, Debbie Bartlett said, every action has a reaction. What has it been like in other Caribbean countries? And it's important for us to discuss that we are not going at this alone. This isn't something that the Bahamas is doing in isolation. What's been the reaction? What have been some of the responses in other Caribbean countries?
So we actually have colleagues across the Caribbean who have been talking with us about their experiences doing something similar. So we have colleagues in Jamaica who in 2018, I believe, they started their ban on plastics. Their own was a little bit more disastrous because they only gave a 3-month lead. So individuals only knew 3 months in advance.
Sorry, just so that we are clear, all have been talking about this for an entire year.
Over a year.
Over a year.
From 2018 of March
up
until December, up until now, 2020 January, we're still talking about it. But other Caribbean countries gave a less of a lead time. So they had a bit more issues with persons not being prepared or even with persons, I guess, stockpiling items and thinking that they would have been able to use them, not realizing that they had a cold turkey cut. That one was in a transition. It was in...
And I'm glad you brought that up. So why was it important or what were the positives of giving us more lead time? Well, even though some of us still were completely caught off guard in January. But what were the positives of giving this initiative more lead time?
So if we really think about it, did you go into the store in January and take a reusable bag with you? Wasn't that something that you thought about?
I have been using reusable bags for over a year.
Awesome.
I keep them in my car.
So
I even have reusable Walmart bags that I travel with.
But normally when we have these discussions, most Bahamians would say no. January 1st, I did go into the store and I did not have a reusable bag with me. So the purpose of us having the bag fee there was that if you do in fact forget to bring a reusable bag with you, there will be something there available for you, but it will now be a cost associated with it so that you will remember to bring your bag with you, one, and so you will not rely anymore on this plastic item that used to once be free. Because if it was free, January 1st, it would have been business as usual. We would not have been having this discussion. We would not have had so many people being up in arms about the ban, possibly. And if we had a cold turkey cut, persons that are walking out of the store now with their things in their hands would have still been doing that as well.
There was so much misinformation, chaos, and I even say foolishness surrounding all of this. There were the stories of what's going to happen to the packing boys, and I'm going to take a pillowcase to the food store, and it was almost hysteria over all of
bag.
this.
It did turn into some hysteria. I would encourage people to still use your packing boys. Take your reusable bags.
Because they still have to pack the
And the
group.
packing boys will gladly
They
pack
still
it
have to
for
take
you.
it to the car.
They will
same
take it to the
concept.
car,
Aye,
and
aye.
you should still tip them the same that you would have tipped them had they packed your groceries in a plastic bag. I really want to stress that this is a new reality for us in the Bahamas. The plastic bags, they're not coming back. So if you need a reusable bag, I would encourage you to find one. The ministry is going to continue with its bag giveaways starting again next week. Come and see us when we go out on the streets.
You guys are going to be at different locations.
We'll be at different locations. Come and find us to get your reusable bag. But the plastic bags, they're not going to make a comeback.
Now, one of the areas of great contention were the fees. These fees that were put in place, people asked outright or said outright, this seems like another tax.
Okay, so the fee is there as a deterrent. It's not a tax. The government is not collecting the 25 cents to $1.
Could you repeat that?
The government is not collecting the 25 cents to $1 that businesses charge for the bags. The fee is also not mandatory, which also makes it not a tax. What we encourage people to do, again, is to get yourself a reusable bag so that you do not have to pay for this plastic bag at the point of sale. And I would like to say that any bag now, any single-use plastic bag that is used at the point of sale will incur a charge. Many businesses are attempting to use garbage bags and to put groceries or other items in. Those would also incur a fee because you are now using it as a bag at the point of sale.
Interesting. And is there, and that's just, so that charge at 25 cents to $1, I just want to clarify, that is completely hinging upon the merchant.
Yes.
The merchant does not have to charge that.
No, the legislation speaks to there must being a charge, 25 cents to $1. That is a fee that must happen. Now, if the merchants are found not in compliance with the legislation, they will be fined. So it is important for consumers to know that yes, this is not a tax, but because you do not need to purchase a bag, get yourself a reusable bag, or if you wish to take a pillowcase, you are more than welcome to do that.
Or any
A
other
straw
bag in your house.
Any other bag.
I'd say everybody has a bag in their house.
Yes.
I mean, even if you have an old plastic bag, you could use until you get the reusable.
Well, again, the merchants are required to report on the sales of their plastic bag. We have inspectors out there right now, actually, and they're doing their inspections to large stores, small stores, medium-sized stores to ensure that the stores across the Providence in particular are showing the bag charge on the receipt. So if you take a plastic bag to the store, the merchant may allow you in, but if one of the inspectors stops that customer leaving the store and they cannot show where they purchased that bag, that store will be liable and may be subject to a fine.
So you can be stopped for using for taking your own bag in?
Plastic bag.
Your own plastic
Yes.
bag in. Interesting, because a lot of people are doing that. Another question, is VAT added to those fees?
Yes.
So it's 25 cents or
Plus
VAT.
plus VAT.
So
And the government collects that money.
of course, the government collects its VAT. So the minimum charge for a bag will be about 28 cents when you account for VAT.
Interesting. And does the merchant have to ask you if you want a bag? I've been places where they've just given me a bag, and
Did they
you know,
put it
I
on
have
the
to be.
receipt?
I have to say that I've been delinquent in checking the receipt to see whether I was charged. But the items just were thrown into a bag, particularly foodstuffs. You know, if you're buying, prepared meals, etc. And a lot of places are still giving bags in that regard.
So we are made aware that some businesses are in fact just adding the 25 cents onto your bill and giving you a plastic bag. And we have discouraged businesses from doing that because you may not want to pay 25 cents for a bag. So we've encouraged businesses to please ask the customers, would you like to have a plastic bag if it's a plastic bag that you're giving, and let the customer say yes or no. Do not assume that this individual wants a plastic bag.
And could I turn it down if I see that they've given me a bag and say, wait a minute, I've been charged.
I have done that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can take this food in my hand.
I have done that, and I have requested my 25 cent reimbursement. and I've gotten it. But it's relative to the bag fee as well. It's important for us to highlight that merchants could also use alternatives to the plastic bags, and those do not require a bag fee at checkout.
Yeah. So paper bags.
Paper bags. They can even give reusable bags free. I know for sure one of our partners, AML Foods, they have been doing that for almost all of 2018. They've been packing persons' groceries in free reusable bags. Other agencies did also take a similar stance where they were giving away the reusable bags for free. Once you purchase, they automatically put it in a free reusable bag.
All right, so one of our viewers sent in a question saying, Sinead J.A. Forbes sent in this question. I don't understand why the government allowed businesses to impose a tax, calling it a tax, on citizens as a deterrent if they're trying to get rid of the bags. It makes no sense. Please explain. Why did they give them until June to get rid of these bags?
Oh, I think Lyndee started to touch on that a bit earlier. The fact that if it was a cold turkey cut, if you went into the store without a bag, you would not have access to a bag. So the 6-month period is for the Bahamian population to get adjusted, to ease into life with less plastics. But that fee is there to encourage you, since let's not use the word deterrent. That fee is there to encourage you to bring your reusable bag the next time.
But also too, it's not really a time for persons to get rid of their plastic bags per se, because businesses knew from 2018 that this ban was coming. And
they didn't know. They could not have known. They could not have known because they have all these plastic bags stockpiled.
We've been speaking with businesses from 2018. They were all aware, and they all knew that they should have been reducing their stock so that they would not have any surplus of supplies left over. Now, if businesses stockpiled, thinking that persons would have been purchasing the 25 cents, and now they're not purchasing the 25-cent bag.
We've got to take a break. But when I come back, I do want to talk about what's going to happen sort of after the June deadline, particularly those stores who have the stuff stockpiled. Stay with us. We're going to take a break and be back with more On the Record right after this.
Matt, where in the world is Matt Lauer? Where in the world is Ellison Greenslade? And so it's about the low value cottage in Atlanta. So we can talk about it.
More On the Record tonight. The government's purchase of the Grand Botine is a hot subject in the news.
This portion of On the Record brought to you by Generali, your employee benefit solutions provider.
Thank you for staying with us. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer, and this is On the Record. This segment is brought to you by Generali Insurance. Since the introduction of the plastic ban, a lot of emphasis has been placed on the elimination of one-time use plastics. However, the new Environmental Protection Act covers much more than that. What about styrofoam, straws, the releasing of balloons into the atmosphere? Dr. Rhianna Neely-Murphy, Senior Environmental Officer, and Lyndee Bowe, Environmental Officer of the Ministry of Environment and Housing, joining me to discuss this issue or these issues. What will happen to those businesses or business owners as of July 1st who still have these single-use plastics in their possession?
Okay, so very succinctly, the legislation speaks to businesses or any person not distributing, manufacturing, using any of the banned items after the 30th of June. Mm-hmm. So if you are still found having these items in your possession, especially as a business, you will be fined in connection with the law. The ministry understands that there will be a few businesses that may have a surplus. Many of them have called into us expressing that the ban has rolled out way better than they would have expected it to, as Bahamians are not purchasing the plastic bags. So even the ones that would have, some of them said that they did reduce their ordering patterns, they did change their ordering patterns to account.
So we did comply? We are complying?
Bahamians are very complicit with the legislation.
God is good.
God is, thank you, Lord.
Go ahead.
But we understand that there may be some products left behind,
Mm-hmm.
so the ministry will begin its public education and outreach campaign again with respect to what you can do with the items that you may have a surplus of. And we'll put together drop-off stations so that you can get rid of them.
So people will be able to get rid of them?
Yes.
Okay. We've been talking about plastic bags, but these are not the only things that are banned. So I want to talk about the other items that are banned and what is happening with them.
So there are actually 4 items that are banned. So plastic bags at point of sale are the first ones. Then we also have styrofoam food containers and cups, plastic food utensils, and plastic straws. In addition to these 4 items, the release of balloons have also been banned as of January 1st. You can still use balloons, just can't have releases.
No
or
releasing
let
them into
over
the
there.
atmosphere. So when you're done, you have to pop them.
Yes.
So what's happening? Okay, so the folks who still have styrofoam containers, cups, etc., even the plastic, they have until July
Yes.
to get rid of
Correct.
their stock. Now, I want to talk a little bit about styrofoam and why that's so dangerous. We've become a styrofoam using society everywhere you go, every restaurant, every cookout. You know, when you leave in by mama in the evenings, you know, you throw your food in the styrofoam containers. You know, everybody has them. Why are they so dangerous?
So styrofoam is also a byproduct of the fossil fuel industry. And so the picture that I like to paint for people is when you consider putting your food in styrofoam, consider going to the gas station and just, guzzling that gas station juice down your throat. Because the minute you put hot food into that styrofoam container, or the minute you put that styrofoam container into the microwave with your food, it starts to melt. And that fossil fuel product finds its way into your food. Okay? This is aside from the environmental impacts of styrofoam. But this is a human health issue. So the styrofoam, all of the dioxin and everything that is in that styrofoam, which is a carcinogen, which means that it causes cancer, you ingest that. And if you consider, if you put grits is a hot food, right?
We eat grits every morning.
We eat grits every morning out of a styrofoam container from some vendor on the side of the road, or if you go to a restaurant. Grits is hot. Your steamed tuna is hot. Sardines may be cold. If you put chicken in styrofoam, you can see that the styrofoam has
rice,
through
macaroni,
all
these
things.
hot
So
items.
all of that fossil fuel product is making its way into that food that we're going to put in our mouths.
And this is not even, and this is before it goes into the microwave.
This is
It's
before
it goes
this is
So
before it
when
goes
you
into the
put it in the microwave, now
Watch
you
it
reheat.
melt into your food when you put it into the microwave.
And we eat that.
And styrofoam cups.
Styrofoam
Yes.
cups. We
So
put
our
put
tea
your hot
and
tea.
all that tea and coffee we drink every day.
So I encourage you to take a styrofoam cup, put some hot water in it, and you will watch the film start to appear on the top of the water. Just clear water, clear hot water. And you will see the film. That is oil. That is fossil fuel in your water. Nice, isn't it?
Stunning. Has there been a direct correlation between the high incidences of cancer that we are experiencing, or even around the world, to the ingestion of these chemicals, fossil fuels, etc., that are coming from styrofoam and other things that we are taking in?
Well, we know that dioxin is a carcinogen, and dioxin is contained in these plastics. So if you continue to ingest them, you will have that correlation to the dioxin that is within the plastic in the styrofoam. Dioxin is one of the major cancer-causing agents. These are not only cancer-causing agents; they cause neurological diseases, they cause menstrual issues, reproductive issues, all kinds of medical issues in humans. And some of the effects we don't fully understand, but we know that they are disruptors. They are disrupting our bodily functions.
So styrofoams, plastics, all these kinds of things, what are they being replaced with? That's the first question.
So many of the alternatives are plant-based products. So we have paper cups, compostable spoons, knives and forks that are made from things like sugarcane, palm leaf, things like that, cassava. So they start from the earth, and so they will return to the earth once we would have disposed of them in the correct facilities.
But there is a difference, if you can explain, between the composite and the
compostable.
compostable
So
and
biodegradable products are actually made from the same fossil fuels as a regular plastic item. They just have an additive in it that causes it to break up as opposed to break down.
So we're ingesting the same things with the
Same
biodegradable.
concept with a
they just
regular
disappear
plastic.
faster.
They just break up and they don't break down, whereas compostable products actually break down. So it's really like a very close, biodegradable sounds really environmentally
It
friendly.
sure does.
But when we're relating it to plastics in particular, it's it's not good. It's not as good as using a compostable or something that's actually made from plants, and it can go back into
So
its
that's
natural
what we need to be
components.
looking for.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. But these items cost a bit more.
Yes. They do cost a bit more, and we understand that. So many of the alternatives prior to the passing of this legislation, they incurred a duty of 45%. Plastic is dirt cheap, I will say that. So any alternative will be a bit more expensive, a bit more costly than the plastic. But to account for this change in price, the duty was adjusted from 45% to 0. So all of these alternatives now have a 0 rate. So when you bring them in, you don't pay customs on them. And if you would have brought in any of these alternatives prior to the legislation passing, we are encouraging businesses or anyone that would have brought these in large numbers to keep your receipts, and you will be eligible for a credit with the Bahamas Customs.
As you said, it's a new reality. I want us to talk a bit about the balloons as well and releasing them into the atmosphere. It seems, why would you not want to release balloons? They're so beautiful. They make us all happy. Everybody loves balloons.
So really, what happens with balloons is like a basic human saying, I guess, what goes up must come down. So they go into the atmosphere and eventually they pop. And because we live on an archipelago, we are surrounded by water. The chances of that balloon popping and ending up into the landfill is very slim. But what is very high is the chance of it ending up into the ocean. And what happens is that animals that live in the ocean confuse balloons or these other plastic items as well with food. They're not able to determine the difference between this being something that they shouldn't eat versus something that they should eat that's nutritious for them. So they consume all of these plastic items and then they get sick because they can't digest these plastic items. So their stomach is literally full of plastic and they no longer feel hungry because they can't get rid of the plastic. But now, because they don't feel hungry, they're now dying of malnutrition. So you'll find that a lot of turtles, a lot of fish, birds even, are now washing up on shore, and if you do a dissection on them, you would find that their stomach is literally filled with plastic.
That's horrible. I never, thought about that, and these are the things that we do that we don't investigate or don't think about in the long term. But all of this still has an effect on businesses. You have people who make their livelihoods from balloons, who make their livelihood from plastic items. I think there's an instance where a plastic an owner of a business, I think, spoke directly to the minister about how it's affecting her business. So what about those folks who are involved in this kind of business and those folks who are in the takeout business and the catering business and they rely on these things? What's the long-term effect for them?
So we have provided alternatives to these businesses. We've had conversations for months with businesses to advise them of the alternatives. In many instances, we've advised them where they would be able to find the alternatives, and they of course know that the duty rates were changed so that they would be a bit more affordable. So many of those businesses that were directly impacted, we did face-to-face visits with them and had meetings with them so that they understood the implications of the ban on their business and how to make adjustments. Now, that said, many of the businesses either decided not to make the adjustments or they did.
And that's the thing. I mean, you said we've been discussing this from 2018. So even if you take 2018 out of the equation, you had all of 2019 to prepare. So my question is, why would you continue to stockpile things and not make the adjustments when you know that the legislation is coming to change all of this?
That is a question
that I also ask myself.
We're not able to answer.
I mean, I know it's kind of rhetorical. I just kind of can't understand
further to
why
that,
people
we also rely heavily on our environment. So we live. Tourism is basically our bread and butter, and if we don't continue to protect our environment, then all of these businesses will no longer have anybody to support them at all. Like, our economy really relies heavily on the beautification of our environment and the protection of it.
And that's fair. I mean, that's a whole other show. I mean, I can get the folks from BNT and Brief in here. They'll worship the ground you walk on in this instance. But I want to talk, too, about how this ban will affect waste management. That's a huge issue for our country and so many other countries as well. I mean, how is that and how will that affect our waste management?
Well, we know for the plastic bags in particular that we use millions of plastic bags and the tens of millions of plastic bags a year. So if you just consider the plastic bags and those going into the landfill, we have a whole section of the landfill that can now be freed up to collect any number of other things. So it can extend the lifetime of our landfill. These plastic bags in particular are also, they're a nuisance to garbage collection because they are very flimsy, they get caught up in the material, and they're a cheap form of the plastic. So it will very much impact our ability to preserve our landfill, to extend the lifetime of the landfill so that we will be able to accommodate much more of the municipal solid waste that we have to collect.
And that landfill has been an issue for us for such a long time. Finally seems to be getting it on track and in the right direction. This is On the Record. Stay with us. We're going to take another break and come back with a great discussion right after this. Welcome to On the Record.
Looking for more On the Record? If you miss our Thursday showing at 8 p.m., join us for the re-airing on Friday mornings at 10, and then again each Sunday night at 8:30. Or go to our YouTube channel and catch up on all of our past episodes. And then like our Facebook and Instagram pages for a preview of upcoming shows and get a chance to ask your questions. Just look for On the Record.
This portion of On the Record brought to you by Executive Printers of the Bahamas Limited. We print profits for you.
This is On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. This segment is brought to you by Executive Printers. With climate change now a global issue, it makes us all start to think about what can we do to mitigate the effects of this crisis. With tsunami warnings, deadly hurricanes on the rise, what strides can we make to begin reversing the effects of climate change? My guests, Dr. Rhianna Neely-Murphy, Senior Environmental Officer, and Lyndee Bowe, Environmental Officer from the Ministry of Environment and Housing. Very good question. I think we started out talking about it a bit in terms of what can I do? What can I do as an individual to begin to reverse the effects? You look at a Category 5 hurricane and you think, what possibly could I do in my life, in my little space, to impact something like that?
So, again, I think that individuals must understand that every little bit counts. Everything that we can do for our environment will count. I have students at the University of the Bahamas that hop in their car. I don't know if you're familiar with the campus, but they'll go from the T block to Wendy's in a car and go on the drive-through and then come back to the T block. Exactly. So you are burning fossil fuel. You're running your engine. You're also using gasoline. So many of the things that we can do are very economically beneficial to us. So I would encourage my students to walk to Wendy's.
It's good exercise. How about that?
It's good exercise as well. Don't get in your car and start burning that gas just to get some food and then come back. So that is one thing. We can walk a bit more. I know a lot of people would say, well, Nassau isn't designed for walking or bicycling or anything like that. But you can do something in your neighborhood. Most of us now live within a short distance to a convenience store, so we don't have to hop in the car all the time to get everything that we want. A lot of people, there was a thing a few years ago when we started to give out energy efficient lights. Again, this is also very economically beneficial to your personal economy.
I saw my electricity bill decrease when I put those.
No, they
I
really
started
are
using
Yes.
them. Yeah.
So even if you cannot afford an energy efficient bulb at this time, be mindful to turn the lights off when you leave the room. Check your leaky faucets. All of that is using electricity that you will have to pay for. Electricity that right now, for the most part, burns fossil fuel to produce. So these are some small things that we can do. Walk a bit more, get some energy, use that, that God-given on the inside. That
And
we
recycle things. I mean, I know here at Cable and RTV and our News, the company, I should say, Cable Bahamas, Rev, and Alive, undertook a Go Green initiative last year, which has really caused us all to stop and think. We now have to bring coffee mugs to get coffee. We were provided with water bottles to get water, so you're not buying bottles constantly. In the bathrooms, we now have the hand dryers as opposed to using the tissue constantly. And that's really, in the few months that that's been implemented. It's caused me to stop and think on many occasions. I'm like, oh shoot, I really got to bring a coffee cup, or let me make sure my bottle is in my bag when I leave home. But you know, how easy is it to implement those things even in the workplace?
So you mentioned recycling, and we definitely commend Rev and the job that they're doing here. But if you recycle, again, all of these things have a beneficial impact on your personal economy. If you find other uses for things that you would normally throw away, that is one less thing that you would have to purchase. So, and that is also one less thing that would need to be manufactured because you threw something away. So we save energy and we save money at the same time. So if a lot of us start to think about these kinds of things, if you get a mug as opposed to getting a stack full of styrofoam cups that I have to use one and throw it away, you can wash that cup with very little water actually, and use that again for the next time you want some tea or some coffee or whatever it is that you're drinking. So many of these actions are very practical for us in saving the environment, saving our economies, and also, but also saving our personal economies. You get to save a lot of money.
I want to talk a little bit about renewable energy, and are we moving towards that as a country, and how will that benefit us?
Okay, so the Ministry of Environment is responsible for renewable energy in the country, and the energy policy speaks to an introduction of 30% renewable energy by the year 2033. And in the last few years, especially, we have been making some great strides in achieving that. We have the almost 1 megawatt at the stadium that is on and functioning, that's producing electricity and supplying
Those
it to
are the panels,
the panels in
in
the parking
lot.
lot.
Yeah.
Yes. So we recently finished an installation at the Anatole Rogers High School that is 500 megawatts. We're wrapping up the evaluation process on a similar project to the stadium at the Office of the Prime Minister that will accommodate another 500 kilowatts. We're going to do something at TG Glover, 250 kilowatts, and we're also expanding this plan to the Family Islands. Many of the Family Islands use the same fuel source that we use in the Bahamas, in New Providence. Diesel is very expensive. So again, these are practical solutions to some of the problems that we have in the cost of electricity delivery. So we're expanding the renewable energy program to the Family Islands, and we're introducing solar there as well.
Also, just a correction, she said 500 megawatts at Anatole. It's actually 500 kilowatts.
Sorry.
Okay.
But also to highlight too, we actually won 2 awards regionally for our renewable energy projects. The one at the stadium won Best Distribution, and the one at Anatole Rogers actually won Best Energy Efficiency. So in addition to installing panels, we also did an energy audit of the school and implemented more energy efficient measures.
So are we going to see these types of programs in more government buildings, schools,
That's the plan.
things of that nature? You
Yeah.
say that's the plan.
That's
what
the
you
plan.
Well, we have a plan to
Yeah.
target government buildings in
Right.
New Providence and across the Family Islands. Abaco has moved to the top of the list. We have an opportunity now after Dorian to reassess the construction and the use of solar panels and things like that on an island like Abaco. So that has moved to the top of the pile. So we're looking at ways that we can introduce renewable energy into the government buildings there.
Is Ragged Island in that plan as well?
Ragged Island is
almost
actually
complete.
set to come on stream very soon,
Yeah.
within this year, as I am told. So
And what all does that involve? I'm very curious now.
Ragged Island, as I understand it, will be the first quote unquote green island with respect to electricity in the Bahamas. So all of their electricity uses will be from solar
generation.
panels, and they will have backup generators.
One of the complaints that you will hear, people will say that the solar panels, the equipment for renewable energy is expensive. That's one. Secondly, I think there is a program as well where you can look to sell energy back to be able to put it back
scale.
into the grid.
Yeah.
And people talk about that process being long and arduous and sometimes difficult. What are we doing to, one, continue to reduce the cost? I mean, I'd love to put solar panels in my house. There are many others who would, but the cost is prohibitive.
Okay, so with solar panels, you do need to have some capital at the outset. But I would say that the costs have come down in the last few years, and it is almost level with that of diesel delivery. So if you're looking into it, if you have some
Upfront money.
if you have not concessionary, if you have some some free money that you would like to invest in your home.
Little elastic in your budget.
It's a little elastic in the budget,
Yeah.
You can invest in
But
a solar system
you
and add on to it.
You said something very critical, invest. It is
Yes.
an investment.
It
And
is
like
an
anything
investment.
else, we invest in the things that are important to us.
Correct.
But you will actually see the return with an investment like solar energy, or even an investment like getting an electric vehicle.
And so, electric vehicles too, I notice are very popular. Is it, if I decide, okay, I want to put solar panels onto my house, I've got the money, I want to set it up, what's the process in getting that? Do I need to come to the ministry? Do I need to get special approval? How does it work out? Do I just find someone to set it up?
Okay, so we have the Small Scale Renewable Energy Generation Program, and that is the program through which anything under
Megawatt.
1 megawatt will apply to the Bahamas Power and Light Company to be certified. And we need the certification to ensure safety. This is electricity that we're speaking about. So if BPL needs to shut power to a particular area off, we don't need for individual customers to still be feeding electricity into the grid, because this can result in the death of somebody.
Particularly if there are power lines down or
Exactly.
something. Yeah.
So
these are things we don't think of. But go ahead.
Exactly. So we need to make sure that people who are feeding into the grid are registered so that the company knows where we have. This is electricity, live electricity.
You can't just be setting up your own
No.
power.
You should not do that.
No.
It is a safety hazard,
Okay.
and we can lose lives here.
Sure.
So you can register for that program. The registration, they had waived the registration fee for a very long time, but I think the registration fee is $50, and it is a one-time fee. And as long as you are under the threshold, you will be able. They will work
You
out.
spend more
with
than
you.
that playing numbers. And
Oh,
what you
Lord.
doing? But anyway, move on.
But you, through the program, you will feed electricity into the grid, and for the electricity that you do not use, BPL will issue you a credit. So BPL will not write you a check, but they will issue you a credit for
Credit
the
is good.
electricity that you send to them. So that means your electricity bill has been cut.
Okay, so we've talked in depth about sort of the solar energy. Are we looking at other forms of renewable energy? Wind, water. I mean, you look at the environment around us, and it is just ripe with opportunities. There's wind everywhere in the Bahamas. I mean, we're an archipelagic nation. There's water everywhere. Are we looking at these forms as well?
So we are looking into wind as well. Wind, particularly on family islands. You need a certain set of conditions for the wind vanes to actually spin. If the wind vanes are not spinning, you're not making electricity. You're not making electricity. So in New Providence, the population is pretty dense. You don't have a lot of wind to build up in areas.
A lot of
So
building
right.
space, yeah.
So we have some constraints on New Providence. So on the family islands, we're looking into wind. Much of the technology around things like tidal and OTEC are still uncertain. And we wouldn't suggest that we make large investments in these kinds of technologies right now. They still have some kinks that should be worked out, but the technology around wind and solar right now are very secure. We don't have geotech, so that's the difference between the hot at the bottom of the earth and the cool at the surface. We don't have those kinds of mountains. We don't have rivers to take advantage of those kinds of things in the Bahamas. So some of the renewable energy opportunities are not available to us because of our topography, but the ones that are, we are definitely looking into those.
Do you think our people will embrace these opportunities when they happen? I mean, we look at what happened with the introduction of the ban on plastics. Do you think we will readily embrace these opportunities and understand what they mean for us?
I think so. I think we have a lot of young Bahamians that are looking into becoming technicians for renewable energy. They're looking at becoming installers because there is.
So this is now an industry where people can become. So we're not talking about jobs and income.
Yes. A young man from Grand Bahama came into my office last week just to introduce himself to let us know that he is in Grand Bahama and these are his set of skills. So when we have calls for requests for proposals, please don't forget about us in Grand Bahama. So there are people that are out there looking to be trained in these areas because these are viable options for young Bahamians. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a medical doctor. You can go and be a solar installer and make a good living.
That's interesting. And I'm always looking to share with people opportunities to diversify our skill set and even businesses. I mean, obviously it's a good business as well. Well, folks, we're going to take our final break in the show. Stay with us. Our final segment is still to come. Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true, and open debate they've been looking for.
And the icon goes to On the Record.
On the Record was born out of a desire to do something different. What we do every day helps our country, it helps our society, it helps to shape the views and opinions.
Gentlemen, we've got to move very quickly. Let's wrap up. It's all On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break. Welcome back. This is our final segment in the show. So happy that you've decided to stay with us. While the plastic ban is commendable initiatives towards combating the effects of climate change, it takes more than the government just implementing policy. As we discussed before the break, we all have a responsibility to do our due diligence to make the Bahamas more environmentally friendly. Leading this charge, of course, is the Ministry of Environment and Housing, and experts like my guest, Dr. Rhianna Neely-Murphy, Senior Environmental Officer, and Lyndee, Bowe, Environmental Officer. I have to tell you, every time I say those titles, I'm out of breath.
It is a bit much.
It's a lot. So, as we now focus a lot more on doing the things that are going to at least help to reverse or slow down the changes in our climate and start to slow down some of the effects. You all are still discovering, this is still a journey of discovery in many ways, in that you're finding people are using plastics in other areas to do all kinds of things that are banned. I want to talk about some of the, even recent discoveries you have come across and some of the things you're doing to mitigate those.
So, again, plastic is very cheap. Plastic is also a very powerful substance in that it can hold lots of things if put together properly. So many people who are in the manufacturing industry use plastics. And not all plastic is bad. You need things like disposable needles, you need pill bottles, you need medicine containers, you need those things. You need tubing if you're in the hospital or something like that. So we're not saying that all plastic is bad. Again, it goes back to the previous segment when we consider your decisions. Be an educated consumer and know where you're putting your dollars. Where you put your dollars is where you put your vote. If you decide that you're going to pay for plastic because it's cheaper, then you're going to be paying for us to destroy our planet or for us to clean up our planet a few years down the line. And in years gone by, when we could have said that climate change, like I said before, is 50 years, 100 years down the road, the impacts of climate change are staring us in the face. We cannot run away from flooding. We cannot run away from the forest fires. We cannot run away from Category 5 hurricanes. The Bahamas has not had a Category 3 hurricane in years, but we've had Category 4 hurricanes. We've had Category 5 hurricanes.
That's interesting. I never even thought about that. It's been a long time since we've had a 3.
It's been a while since we've had and the building codes are built to Category 3. Thank God we haven't had the damage and devastation yet, again, like we've had with Dorian and other islands. But these are things that we have to deal with now. This is a clear and present danger that we have to address. So people must take it seriously.
And what about, I guess what I was trying to get at, you have folks who are sort of using plastics and tea bags and things of that nature. I mean, what are we doing to address those things?
So it came to our attention that an international manufacturer has a fancy tea bag, but the actual bag is made from plastic. Again, we must become educated consumers. It was brought to our attention by a consumer who read an article and said, well, this is a problem. We discussed the impacts of using heated plastic. So can you imagine having your tea
soaking through the plastic?
Would have been, but this tea was contained in a plastic bag from the time that it was put in that plastic bag. It had to travel here. We don't manufacture tea in the Bahamas. So it had to travel here, and it sat on a shelf somewhere. So all of these things, this is a compilation of nonsense that we have to become aware of.
Lyndee, if I'm a consumer and I'm out there and something disturbs or bothers me, what can I do? I want to bring something to your attention.
So we actually we're very accessible, I would like to say. We have an email address, moehplastics, or you can email us
moehplastics
at bahamas.gov.bs. We also have a general email address, min.of.environment.and housing@bahamas.gov.bs. We're on Facebook. We get a lot of inboxes of persons bringing us aware of environmental issues or letting us know that their neighbor been doing some polluting and we need to come check it out. So we have a Facebook page.
So you can report things on the page?
You can report
yes.
things.
Okay.
We get a lot of reports that we actually do go and investigate. Ministry of Environment and Housing on Facebook. On Instagram, we are MOEH242.
To Instagram as well?
We're on Instagram as well. Soon we'll have Twitter.
We're all over. Let's talk a little bit, though, as we wrap up about some of the initiatives, some of the other things. I mean, the ban on plastics and some of the work you're doing is very important at this point. But what can we look to see coming out of this ministry? Particularly this, in the scheme of things, this is a new ministry for us. It's sort of like the environment was sort of tacked on to something, previously, but now it's a ministry that's really taken prominence, So what are some of the things that we can look for from this ministry in the future?
So I would like to say that with the passing of the plastic pollution legislation, we did pass and get gazetted several other pieces of legislation. One that, you rightly said, established the Ministry of the Environment. One as well that introduced and established an Environmental Planning and Protection Act. So now we have teeth, we have legislative recourse, and we're outfitting the ministry now to be the enforcers of this legislation. So we're looking to hire people that are interested in this area that would have the background that is necessary. So put in an application to the Ministry of the Environment. We're looking for qualified and passionate people about our environment. So a lot of the complaints about laws in the Bahamas is that, we have all kinds of laws, but we can't enforce them. So we are now outfitting the Ministry of the Environment to be the enforcer with respect to environment and environmental conservation in the Bahamas.
And are we seeing now a change, a shift in the mindset? In another place when we spoke about this, I said there was a time that only white Bahamians and foreigners were focused on the environment. It wasn't something that we as a people paid a lot of attention to. It was just something that, those folks over there are concerned about. They're the tree huggers and that kind of stuff. But are we becoming more conscious as a people?
I think that we are, and I think that it is because many of the grassroots, we've been speaking a lot about grassroots in relation to the plastic ban and that they will not be able to afford to live and afford to eat. But many of the grassroots populations depend directly on our environment. So they are now understanding as well that if we do not protect and preserve and conserve our environment, their livelihoods would also be impacted. So they're getting involved. We have had very little pushback from much of the grassroots companies and businesses, small businesses that we have encountered. Many of them are in compliance, and many of them went out and sought before the implementation date of the ban their alternatives to these banned items. So grassroots, regular Bahamians are understanding that there is a direct correlation between my economy, my personal economy, and the preservation, conservation, protection of the environment.
Do you see a shift in getting more young people involved? I mean, you talked about the over the hill divine. Like, I always like to talk about the millennials and Gen X and Gen Z. Are those generations? Because I love to speak to the young people. Because in a couple of years I'm going to be done here. It's going to be your time. But do you find that this generation, this age group, are they focused on the environment?
I think that they are definitely more aware of their personal impacts on the environment, and that translates into where they spend their dollars. My parents may have just purchased something because this is where we buy things, and this is what we do as a Bahamian. Many of the younger people that I come across, they're actually thinking about their purchases. They're very conscious, and they spend their dollars with the companies that they're comfortable. So they won't be forced to do anything. They're going to spend where they're comfortable. They're going to spend time with where they're comfortable. So I think that is a difference between maybe a generation before and these ones that are now. Their awareness has translated into a changed behavior.
Excellent. But I think too, even if you look at the University of Bahamas, using them for example, when I first started there weren't many persons doing the major small island sustainability. And now you'd find the classes for that major are becoming full. They now have a research complex just for small island sustainability. They have a climate change unit that they now set up. So you'd find that there is a shift happening. I think young people are an integral part of it.
Good news. Great to hear. I think that's a great way for us to end our discussion tonight. First of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having
this
us.
has been very valuable, interesting, even funny information at times. But, we always try to leave people with a sense of understanding. And hopefully the issue really begins to resonate and people understand what you are trying to achieve. And certainly continue to input. I encourage people, to utilize the Facebook, utilize emails, communicate. I always say this is our country.
Yes.
We all have a stakehold in this country. Our voices need to be heard. You need to hear from us.
Yes.
Hear our concerns, and of course, by and large, too, we have to make sure that we arm ourselves with the correct information. Since 2018, folks, this has been happening since 2018. And some of us were so surprised in January. But it is what it is. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
for having us.
Take care.
Well, that's going to do it for us today. Very special thank you to you for staying with us. A heartfelt thank you to my guest, Dr. Rhianna Neely-Murphy, a Senior Environmental Officer, as well as, I think your name slips me. I'm so sorry. Lyndee, thank you so much. Thank you. I apologize for that, the onset of age. We thank you so much also to my technical team. We're going to see you again next week. Be sure, until then, you stay tuned to our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, right here on Tonight.